Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Yak Gadget for all your fine quality kayak fishing accessories. Go to yakgadget.com. Pelican cases, coolers, and lighting. Go to pelican.com. And the 153 Bait Company for all your hard and soft bait needs. Go to the153angler.com. So join with me as together we dive into the tips and techniques that will help make us better anglers out on the water. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs here on the Paddle and Fin Podcast. I am your host, Sean Lavery, and tonight we have the return of the Queen. I'd like to welcome back Susie Roloff, the outdoor woman, back to the Paddle and Fin Noobs show. Welcome back, Susie.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Welcome, everybody. Always a pleasure.
So it's been a hot minute since you've been on the Noob show. So I wanted to take a moment and catch up with you and see, what's new in the world of Susie.
Yeah, it definitely has been a minute. I'm trying to think of the last time I was on the Noob show. But yeah, it has been a hot second. But, there hasn't been really a whole lot going on in the world of Susie lately as far as like fishing wise goes. Everything and around me, Banner Marsh and Spring Lake, which are my closest lakes, closed off to fishing for waterfowl season. So, yeah, my last day out on Banner was it like a month ago now? Something like that. Yeah, it's kind of depressing. Yeah, it was like the 17th of October was my last day on there. And it was actually a really good day. I was able to capture some pretty good footage of my last day on there with some of the baits that we're actually going to be talking about today. But yeah, other than that, as far as what I've been up to, not a whole lot. Working on some house projects. Hopefully getting my she shed going a little bit this winter too. That's been a little bit of a drag this year, is not having that all set up. Hence why I'm in the basement again. But my goal is to eventually get my studio and work area and everything set up out there. So a couple winter projects, working with that. And then definitely going to be cleaning up my gear here soon. I haven't made the move of anything yet because I'm still kind of in that transition phase of, am I just going to keep it where it is now, or am I actually going to be able to move it into my she shed type of thing? So, but yeah, things haven't been, too lively. So yeah, just been kind of chilling and thinking about next year too.
So does your season ever open up back again, or once it closes for waterfowl, you're done?
Yeah, pretty much. Sometimes I'll go to Argyle Lake, which is in Colchester, Illinois, the third weekend in October for trout fishing. But I didn't this year, just with some other plans and time constraints and whatnot. I haven't been there in a couple of years, just, with, tournament schedules and other things going on. But usually when it comes to like kayak fishing, I usually do kind of end my season around that time, just because if I do want to go anywhere, it's probably over an hour drive just to go somewhere that is open and that does have decently good fishing. So,
gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that's kind of sad, but I mean, it allows you to start organizing things and start thinking about next year and all that stuff. I don't put my kayak up until I absolutely have to, and with using my dry suit, I think I still have a little bit of ways to go. I'm hoping to fish a few more times at least before I put the kayak up to the rafters and get my snowblower a little ready to see some action. So
right.
So cool. Well, I know you mentioned your last trip out. You got to use some of the baits I think we're going to cover tonight. But you kind of gave me a list of what you think you know really well, and I know there's definitely some that one thing I haven't talked about and one thing I've talked about a bunch because it's one of my favorite things to throw. But so we'll start off with the one that I don't know much about. I had to even ask Susie before the show if what I thought was that Laura was right, and she told me that I did. So I do have a few of them. I've never really used them, but we're going to start off with swim jigs.
That's right. So a swim jig, what technically qualifies like as a swim jig? So you think of a jig, with a hook on it, and it's got a head to it, and you just swim it. So hence, the name swim jig. So
You make it sound so simple.
It does, you don't have to be very complicated with it, Some of them come, with skirts. Some of them just come without a skirt that you can swim just as like a swim bait type thing. And that's kind of like a loose term that a lot of people will use. They'll be like, I caught it on a swim bait or a swim jig. Sometimes those terms do get used for the same thing, whether it is actually a swim jig or like a swim bait. But specifically for this topic, we are doing the swim jig. So it is the weighted head with the skirt, and then it's got the trailer on the back of it as well. So when it comes to presenting the swim bait, there's two different ways that I usually rig it up. And the first way is shown here. So I've got like just a rage tail on the back of this one. And this is just like the regular 4-inch one, I believe it is. This is like the green pumpkin purple color, or green pumpkin with like the purple flake. And then the brand of swim jigs that I actually use is I have a guy up in Rockford, Tim Hamilton, with Bassett Baits. And he'll make me any color under the rainbow when it comes to these. He has like hundreds of different skirt materials. He can paint the heads any color. I had him make me some of these for springtime fishing, because that fire crawl red is usually pretty good. And then this one right here too, I had him custom make for me. It's kind of like a darker bluegill color. It's got like a black head, and then the skirt's kind of it's mostly green pumpkin, but there is a little bit of blue in there. That's usually my specialty that I like to use.
That looks pretty sweet.
Yeah. And then, of course, I also have him make me, where are they all at? Here we go. I usually have about 4 or 5 just like regular white ones as well, because, trying to match that hatch with the shad color and then bluegill colors as well. So, the main way that I usually rig them up is with either a rage tail, or usually this one works pretty good for me in the spring because I'm swimming it a little bit slower, is I'll have a like a paddle tail bait. So this is a Kitech tail on the back of this one. And you can kind of get creative with the size of Kitechs that you use on these. This one's, a bigger profile. You can go a little bit smaller. You can even go a little bit bigger. Just kind of depends on, your preference, how fast you're actually going to be retrieving it, and also like the weight that you're using on it as well. With the lighter head, you'll want to go with like a smaller body trailer on there, and then with the bigger heads, you can usually go pretty big with those as well. Now, as far as the technique and where you fish these, a lot of times, especially starting off in the spring, I'll start off with the white color, or sometimes the fire tiger orange color. And I'll fish those around like stumps. If there's any dead weed clumps that I can see in the water, I'll just fish them around there. And usually I'll be either close up to shore or just kind of, slowly retrieving it, not like hovering off the bottom, but, have a pretty good gentle retrieve. And, usually that will do the trick. And I apologize if I sound weird. I've been fighting a head cold for a week as well, too. So that's been a lot of fun.
What makes you choose between the like the rage crawl or the over the Kitech? Like, when do you you said it really depends on the rate of retrieve that you're going to do. So would you say in the spring you're more often leaning one way or the other, or what dictates?
Yeah, in the springtime, I usually lean more towards the paddle tail, just because since I'm going a little bit slower, that tail will kind of have enough a little bit of an action back there to where I don't really have to retrieve it fast to produce a lot of action. With the rage tail, it's kind of the same thing too. It just kind of varies on, kind of my mood too. But in the springtime, why this one works a little bit more than the rage tail, I think it's just like the presentation and the action. In the spring, the fish are, you know, bulking up for the spawn. They're hungry, they're ready to eat. And I haven't really, dove like too deep into this, which, this coming spring, I'm definitely going to try out some different things with that as well. But I have noticed though in the past when I do fish in the spring that the paddle tails usually do work a little bit better because you're mimicking that shad bite. And sometimes, depending on what lake you fish at as well, the bluegill may not be as what's the word I'm looking for? They haven't really spawned yet, so they may not even be, a primary food source at that time yet either. But usually the shad spawn is what I'm trying to mimic at that time.
Gotcha.
Let's see here. But yeah, so you can fish these a lot like a kind of like a jackhammer. So like you're fishing grass, weed lines, structure, that type of thing. If you've got wind and you're throwing a jackhammer and they just aren't having any of it, sometimes switching to a swim jig because it's silent will do the trick. I do have a video that I took of my last day out at Banner using this color swim jig right here. And, I probably spent a good 2 hours throwing buzz baits and jackhammer because the wind was booking pretty good. It was maybe like 12 or so. And,
Okay.
I was like, oh man, the jackhammer bite's probably going to be fire, but it wasn't, and I was like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. And then as soon as I tied on the swim jig, it was just boom. It was lights on for that. So let me see here if I can show you guys and if you guys will be able to hear it as well. So this is me out at Banner Marsh. So if you're watching this, you'll be able to see. But if you're just listening, off to my right, there's a shallow area with some lily pads. And there's a wind that would keep kind of blowing me in there. But straight off, there's kind of like a long channel. And it drops down to about 20 foot. And probably about 5 foot in front of me is where it starts to kind of taper down. So about 5 or 6 feet in front of me is probably where it will drop down to about 6 or 7 feet. So there's a good pocket kind of right in this area here, if you're watching, that kind of has like a little deeper area to it that I'm focusing on because of the weed lines that will grow beneath the surface here. So let's see here if I can get this to work. So I'm casting right into the lily pads and working my way out. Boom.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, yeah.
And then you'll see here.
So
bring it
swallowed
right
that swim bait.
Of course, I was kind of excited too. I was like, swallowed that swim bait. And I was just like, well, it was a swim jig that had a swim bait on it type thing, So, I can understand where some of the confusion lies in that as well.
We'll apologize for the heat of the moment.
Yeah, right. It was just like, it was a swim bait. Oh, yeah, it was a swim jig. Yeah.
Now, I noticed when you cast, you were doing like a pump on that, or was that just part of that where that's how you work it? You retrieve kind of steady and then a pump every now and then? Or?
Yeah, that's actually a good observation. So where I was casting was a lot of submerged lily pads and stuff. So when I would pump it, it's because I would either get hung up on something.
Okay.
So most of the time when I'm swimming, when I'm retrieving the swim jigs, I'll cast it out there, and depending on the time of year, water temperature and whatnot, and like depth that I'm trying to aim for will depend on how long I let it fall or how quick I am to retrieve it. So with this one, I would usually cast it out and then let it sink for maybe like a second or two, and then start a good steady retrieve. And again, it's a lot of trial and error, figuring out where that sweet spot is, especially in some of these places like Banner Marsh, because, it's a strip mine and you've got all these different areas that have different depths and everything. So when you're working from a deeper point going up to shallow, I usually like to visually look for where these weed lines are, and I'll either choose to fish kind of right on top of them, or I'll go right next to them. And when I go next to them, I usually let it sink for about maybe 4 or 5 seconds, and then I'll start my good steady retrieve. And again, it just depends where the fish are sitting that time of day too.
Gotcha. So you're either if you're either skimming the top of the grass, or you're just running along the edge, trying to get an ambush strike there. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and sometimes when I'm running deeper, if I feel myself getting kind of hung up a little bit, and you do this with the jackhammer too, is as you're coming through grass and you feel yourself getting caught up on it, you'll kind of do a little bit of like a jerk, and sometimes that'll also cause that initial ambush strike as well.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard, obviously they say jackhammers are really good for grass, but and I don't know if it's just the type of grass that I tend to fish on the river, the celery or whatever, I forget what kind they call it, but it seems to stick on everything. So if I'm fishing and I'm usually, like you said, either I'm not trying to get in it and rip it out of it, because it almost never comes back clean for me, but I'm usually trying to just coast over top of it, or like you said, just parallel it and run it right along the edge where, so something will come out and hammer it, because I just have no luck ripping it through, because I never get it back clean for some reason.
Yeah. And I've had very similar experience as well. I've never really gone down the deep rabbit hole when it comes to that specific technique with running the jackhammer, just because usually when I catch fish on it, it's usually because I'm doing the same thing what I'm doing with swim jigs. I'm running either across the top of grass or, along the edge of it. And whether that be, kind of higher up in the water along the edge or deeper down, type of thing. Sometimes on a cloudy day, I'll run it a little bit shallower because those fish are coming out. And then a bright sunny day, I'll let it sink down deeper, because usually they'll be hunkered down deeper. So.
Right, that makes sense. And I feel like that technique almost suits me better, because I tend there are some finesse techniques that I do go slow, but I also like covering water with a crankbait or something, and I feel like this is the cover water version of the regular jig. You can keep it moving and actually not have to just sit there and drag it and pop it. And they always say, if you're fishing, you think you're fishing a jig too slow, slow down. But
right.
And that drives me nuts. So if I have something that I can just keep moving, I feel like that would be ideal. Now when you are fishing deep, are you trying to hit the bottom every now and then, or are you just trying to keep it above the bottom, just right off the bottom?
Usually the deepest that I comfortably and confidently swim jigs is my deepest point is probably 8 foot, but even then, that's kind of pushing it. I usually keep it, higher than that, just because of the lakes where I'm at. that sweet spot seems to be anywhere between that 2 and 6 foot range.
Gotcha.
You know, unless, you know, if I'm out there early spring, you know, and things are still pretty cold, then I might try something a little bit different, but that's kind of outside my comfort zone and my knowledge zone, you know. But
so not really a deep water bait, but yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
You definitely could too, you know. I mean, you can get really experimental with these as well, you know. You could take the skirt off of them and just make them like a single swim bait type thing, and then just kind of slowly cruise them over the bottom in you know, early, mid, and late winter, and you know, try to mimic kind of like a dead and dying fish, and just slowly taking it off the bottom. You know, and for that, you know, you could keep it with just the little tail, but I know in the winter time, the paddle tail usually will be just enough to what they're wanting.
Gotcha. And then like how often do you throw regular swim baits, just like on a weighted like jig head, you know, versus the one with the skirt? When do you change that up? Like, how do you know which
those at least in my my local area? So like if I'm having a tough time, either you know, there's just thick weeds everywhere and I'm getting hung up on everything, then most of the time that's when I will switch over to the weedless swim bait here. And I've got a setup here just to kind of give you guys a little bit of an idea what we're talking about here. So this is a unweighted version. So we've got a hook here and it's got a spring lock to it. And then what we can do is you'll just take your swim bait. And again, you know, you can use a Kitech, you can use Straight King, you know, whatever brand you want. Get it on the screw lock there. And then feed your hook up through. Oh, this one's popping out on me already. Mm-hmm. And so then this would be a weedless version of a swim bait. So you've got your hook tucked up into there. So that way when you're cruising through stuff, you're not getting snagged up on it. And you're likely to get some more bites with that. A technique that works really good for me, especially when I'm out at Banner, is when it comes to like fishing lily pads and heavy matted areas, like I'll look for like kind of holes and open spots, and I'll just kind of flip either my weedless swim bait, or sometimes I'll even do a really light weighted swim jig and just pitch it in there and then let it sink down. And then I'll kind of pull it up just a little bit. And sometimes on that fall is when I'll get them as well. So, and it keeps it a lot more cleaner as well when you use the weedless versions as well. So it just kind of varies, you know, if you're out there and you're trying the same technique with the same retrieve and it's just not working, you know, change it up. You know, if you're using a jackhammer and they're just not wanting it, go to something silent like the swim jig. Maybe that's what they want at that time.
Gotcha. So with the swim bait, when you're throwing that, it's usually because that it's a little more thicker, or you know, not quite as weedless as, you know, or that where the swim jig might be picking up a little more stuff than you really want. Okay, gotcha. How about like heavy cover? I'd imagine, like, I know some of the one swim jig I have has a pretty good brush guard on it. So I imagine that's halfway decent around heavier cover.
Oh yeah.
But the other one I have doesn't have any, but it does have a screw lock built in there that I think you could probably rig it somewhat weedless. This actually has a screw lock in the middle of the skirt. It's kind of hard to see, but in the middle of the skirt there is a screw lock there.
Yep. So yeah, there's different keepers on some of these. You know, it just depends on, you know, brands and stuff like that. Like this one is kind of similar to like a jackhammer where it's got like the reverse hook up on the upper part of the hook, and then some other ones, like the one you were saying, might have like the screw lock type head, type of thing. So, and then the weed guard, is just simply that it's just helped to kind of deter. What I like to say, is it helps deterring like more solid objects than it is weeds. I mean, your thicker pads and stuff like that, it does a pretty decent job. But like, with the grass and the moss and stuff like that, I mean, you're gonna get that everywhere on that thing.
Right.
Whereas, if you're going through like a brush pile, you're more likely to fend off stuff with your weed guards on there.
So don't be afraid to throw that kind into the kind of heavy stuff.
Nope.
The heavy, like I should say heavy, like structure, like branches and stuff. Whereas grass, maybe not so much, or weeded mats. Yeah, that's probably not going to come back very
You
clean.
definitely could. Again, it's just, on, your kind of skill level, your comfort level, your confidence level. Heavier brush and stuff like that, you're not really going to want to rip it too much in there because you are going to be a little bit more likely to get hung up in those situations. But usually, if I am fishing those types of areas, I'll kind of do a little bit slower of retrieve. And when I feel the bait hitting the wood and stuff like that, I'll kind of slow down a little bit. So that way, if I do, start to get hung up, if I let just enough slack go, then I'll be able to free it a little bit easier.
Gotcha. That's good advice. Yeah. That's still something I'm still learning, is to avoid the crazy snags by, I have a tendency of when I start to feel it, I pull harder instead.
Right. Because you think it's a fish, and you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, dang it.
And you need to actually fight that urge, I guess, a little bit until you learn what it feels like. But yeah. Okay. I saw baitcaster for sure is what you're throwing it on. What kind of rod, like, what reel speed and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So with my swim baits, I generally throw those on a 7-foot medium to medium heavy. Mainly because of the heavy, because as you guys saw, I'm throwing it into, lily pads and stuff like that. And sometimes thicker vegetation, depending on the time of year as well. If I'm kind of more open water, just doing the weeds, then I'll just do like a regular medium. But, a lot of times when I'm at Banner, I'm just like, I'm not even gonna, risk it. I want to be able to horse them out of there if they decide to take off into the weeds and stuff. I usually use a 7:3 ratio bait caster. And with those, usually I can get away with about 12-pound fluorocarbon. But I've even fished with braid on them before too, because again, you've got crazy weeds, crazy lily pads, and stumps and everything everywhere. I don't like to mess around at Banner. Sometimes I'm just like, I just go big or go home.
So. That makes sense. Yeah, for sure. I don't have a lot of grass in the lakes I fish regularly. Now the river is another story. There's a lot of grass in the river, but when I fish the lakes, that's one thing, I don't have a lot of experience with is lily pads and grass and stuff, because my lake is a reservoir, so it's mostly rock. And there's a few places that I have gone that are like that, and I really struggle because I'm not used to it at all. Mm-hmm. And I just need to change my game plan for that, I think, a little bit. And like you said, beef it up and learn how to, get stuff through that. Because when I see it, I kind of shy away from it just because it's not my comfort zone. But I'm sure that's where a lot of the fish in those kind of lakes are, holding in that kind of stuff. So.
Right. Well, like I'm the opposite too, when it comes to like deep, clear, rocky reservoirs, like they're foreign territory to me, because like that is not what I have around me at all. Like if I go somewhere and there's like no weeds or like barely any structure, I'm like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing. So Yeah, definitely need to get more experience with that. Trouble is, is traveling quite the distance to get to those types of lakes. So
Yeah. No, that's I face those same challenges. For me to get to my grass/lily pad lake, it's 45 minutes to an hour, whereas I have the nice rocky reservoir 15 minutes away. So I'm always like,
nice.
I don't want to drive too far, but. And then the river kind of has the best of both worlds for me because it's shallow. The deepest part around me, gets 20 feet, but for the most part, it's shallow and rocky. But there's also flats of grass too that
Nice.
So I can't. I have been slowly learning there. I've kind of been perfecting my grass game there.
Nice.
Rather than go to the lake, but that's throw current into the mix, and it's still a completely different kind of thing than that grassy lake near me because there's no current there. So
right, yeah.
All right, well, so that is the swim jig. I'm definitely going to have to try that out, like I said, because covering water while also doing the jig thing seems like something I definitely want to check out. Maybe work my way through the grass a little easier and not get so frustrated by that.
It is definitely a tool that you can use for power fishing. Like if you're wanting to cover a lot of water really quickly, I mean, swim jig is definitely a great way to do that, especially if you're fishing grasses, weed edges, that type of thing. Perfect bait for that.
Nice. All right, and the other bait we're going to talk about, if anybody who's listened to the show for any length of time knows, the bait I kind of got started with was the Senko or the stick bait. Yes. And, on my local lake where I got started and had the most success was a wacky weighted Senko. And it is what I threw for like the first year almost exclusively because it was the only thing I had confidence in, but it also worked. So, and you can rig them a lot of different ways. They're very versatile bait. So I don't know what's your favorite way to rig your Senkos, or what are you mostly fishing with?
It's kind of a close tie between wacky and Texas rigged, because just like there are days where the fish want the wacky rigged, and then there are days where they want the Texas rigged. And I think it's like a dead even 50-50 between the two, and I mean, I can't complain about either one because both ways are simply versatile. So I mean, I don't know if one really stands above higher. Well, okay, now I will take that back. The higher used one would probably be the wacky rig because I can skip that a lot easier sometimes than the Texas rig. Like if I have weight on the Texas rig, I'm not going to be able to skip it as good. But doing the wacky rigged, skipping it under docks and stuff. Oh yeah, for sure.
That's one thing I hear people talk about docks a ton, and the lakes by me being privately owned reservoirs, there's no docks. There's like one dock on the lake I fish. So I went to a lake last year over the summer on a family vacation, and they had a ton of the floating kind of barrel kind of docks. It wasn't quite the same as the the good old post docks that you see on all the videos and stuff, but still, that was like heaven for me because there was a billion of them on this lake. It was a very big lake down in Maryland, but my local lake. I hear so many people talk about flipping docks and skipping under docks, and I just don't have anything to do anywhere near like that. So I'm looking forward to going places where I can really try that. But I do use the Senko to skip. Like a lot on the lakes I fish, there's a lot of overhanging trees that are like right along the water line,
yes,
right at that height. So that's one thing that I almost, learned right off the bat was skipping up under those trees. And I still can't do it with the baitcaster to save my life, but I can.
I can't either.
Okay. Give me a spinning rod and I can get it deep under there, but I'm gonna backlash like crazy every time.
I've been bass fishing for how many years? Yeah, I cannot skip a Senko with a bait caster to save my life. I've tried. I can't. Give me a spinning reel any day, anytime, and I'll skip that thing like on a dime.
Now, and I also almost right off the bat, I started using a weighted wacky rig hook. Just I guess more for patience than anything. Not a huge weight, like a 16th, maybe an 8th. If I was using like a Z-Man, sometimes since the Z-Man's a little more buoyant, I would bump up to an 8th there. But on like Yumdinger has been my go-to for a long time because they're cheap and they seem to last okay. And so for those, I use like a 16th ounce weighted wacky hook, and I think I think that helps with the action because they don't have quite as much action as Yamamoto Senko, I think. But when you add that weight to it, I think it helps give it a little bit more action because it's kind of getting pulled down.
So if you guys aren't familiar and you're watching, so this is an example of a weighted wacky hook. So it's got like the weight near the top of it. Mine has a weed guard on it, so that's what you see there. And then compared to just a regular wacky hook. So yeah, those are the two differences if you are wondering. So yeah, I do find myself, I'll switch back and forth between weighted and a non-weighted. But in the summer, it's usually exclusively no weight, just because like the fish, there's just something about that natural slow fall that just gets those fish to bite better than a weighted one.
Right, and I think when they're a little more shallow, it makes it easier too because you don't have to wait as long.
Right. Yeah.
Some of like the lake I fish, where those overhanging trees are, it does get to be about 5 foot deep underneath there. It's not like real shallow, so it does take a while if you're just letting it slowly fall. Now I've absolutely done it that way. For sure. And also for the noobs, the real noobs that are listening, when we're talking about wacky rig, what we're saying is you usually put that hook right through the middle of the worm so that as it's falling, you're getting that shimmy action on both sides of it. And it's just a real natural, like it's almost like waving as it's coming down. And just like Susie's showing you there. So again, if you are a beginning angler and you're looking for anything that is going to get you bites, I can almost guarantee you that if you go out and throw a wacky rig Senko on your body of water, 9 times out of 10, like I said, that's what I started with. And it really doesn't take anything other, like you kind of just cast it out. The main thing is watching your line. Because you really got to watch because it's going to be falling on semi-slack line. So you got to kind of really be watching your line for little jumps or all of a sudden your line will just start going away and then to set the hook. So I think that's one of the reasons why it is so easy for beginning anglers because the bait does everything for you. There's no action that you have to impart. It's more just, paying attention and watching for that tick or that bite, and I think that's, really a great beginner bait. That's what I started my kids on then. And it worked well as long as they were keeping it out of the trees. I ended up starting to buy the 20-pack of Yumdingers because they definitely were good at decorating the trees. But, I joke with my daughter about that. But I did my fair share too, to be honest, when I first started. But
we've all been there.
they picked it up quickly and it works for them too. And like we were saying, you can throw it on almost any rod. It really works well because the rod doesn't really impart a lot of action onto it. So it's not to say there's better rods for it. As I got better rods and more sensitive rods, you start being able to feel the bite a little better, even if it's falling on that kind of semi-slack line. You can still sometimes, if your rod is sensitive enough, still feel those bites and not just see them. So
yep, exactly. So I'm going to go over a few little tricks of the trade, as I like to say, especially for newcomers. So For example, let's say you're out on the water and you don't have a weighted wacky hook. You're like, oh man, how am I going to add some weight to this thing without putting a bullet, above your hook? So if you have any of these nail weights, you can very easily add some weight to your worm as well. And if you're fishing it wacky style, I will usually just, kind of stick it in there right in the middle. Or another way that you can do it is you could actually fish it like a Neko rig style. So you'll still rig it wacky style. And then you've got this kind of funny looking weight here. There's no hook to it, but it's got kind of a, let's see here.
So as a keeper on it. Yep.
Yes, it's got a keeper on it, and you'll just put it in the one end. Let's see if I can do this here. Come on. And you've given the end of your Senko some weight, so that way when you're fishing it, you'll have your wacky hook in the middle still. Get it rigged up here. So then as it falls, it's going to be top heavy on this part here, but you can kind of hop it along the bottom, and the action of that with that tail fluttering like that is a totally different way of fishing a Senko, or as they call it, a Neko rig. Now they do make like Neko specific baits. They've got like a little bit fatter of like a end tail and whatnot, or sometimes both ends might be a little fat, but you can still make it work with just a regular Senko as well.
Yeah, so I think I even have some that actually have the weight already in them. I want to say it's like called the 48. I forget. I picked it up somewhere off of like one of those discount tackle sites, and it's nice. I forget who even makes it, and I have some up in the garage. But yeah, it actually has the weight already built in. Dan Perry was the first one I've talked to about that, and he actually uses it more than he uses a wacky rig, because he sang its praises, and I still have yet to get the feel as much as I have for the wacky rig, but I just can't. I still don't have a comfort level of what it's doing on the bottom when I'm kind of just working it along. Mm-hmm. I still haven't quite narrowed down the feel for that yet, but it's something I definitely want to. I think I just need to stick with it for a little bit, and just like it took me a while to get the wacky rig feel. I think just need more time on the water with that one.
Sure. And that's the thing, and even like a debate sometimes too when it comes to the wacky is either the technique or the retrieve. With me, when it comes to the wacky, like I'm either gonna skip it for that initial like action per se, and then if they're not getting it as soon as it's like done skipping and then sinking down to the bottom, like I'm not waiting around. Like I'm going to keep doing that over and over again. Then if that doesn't work, I'm going to kind of go to a different thing. I'm going to, either pitch it or flip it into an area silently if you can. And then I'm going to let it sink, but I'm not going to twitch it or anything. And then like once I know that it's at the bottom, then I'll either do one of two things. I'll either just bring it up really slowly and you'll feel it flutter in your line, and then I'll just let it sink back down again. And sometimes when it comes up and then it flutters back down, sometimes I'll come get it on that time. The other part of that, what I'll do too is I'll let it, I'll throw it out and then I'll let it sink. And then sometimes I'll do just a slight twitch, not like a, twitching type thing, but like, even sometimes just a little crank of your reel will get it to just move just a little bit. And sometimes just that little bit of action will trigger a bite as well. It's so, sometimes it can be really particular, when it comes to, what they want that day, right. And it's all a matter of just, figuring out what it was you did that got that first bite, and if the rest of the fish are looking for that same bite as well.
Right. And this is also another bait I bring with me. I do a week every summer as a camp counselor And the
Nice.
last couple of years, I've been taking all my fishing rods. Initially, I never thought, I thought, wow, maybe one or two kids would want to fish with me. The last couple of years have been amazing. Like every day, all my rods are used during option time. It's like I almost don't get to fish much, but and the Senko is one of the things that I kind of tie on most because again, I feel like it works. And usually, what I tell them to do is I just tell them cast it out as far as you can get it, watch it until the line bellows out. Then you're on the bottom. Then you hop it up, and then let it drop, and do that the whole way back, and it just works. I mean, they just catch them. Now that lake is like totally unpressured because it's on the camp property, and nobody except for campers can fish it. So I love fishing there because it's almost not fair, but and there's huge bass there, but they catch them on it, and so again, great technique, and it really does work.
Awesome.
Now, one thing I've done there, particularly on one end of the lake, it is shallow and with some lily pads and stuff. And the one time I was Texas rigging and almost like jerking it like a jerkbait, I could just, and I used a white worm, so I could see it. I'd cast it out and I'd just pop it, and it would go whoop, and then I'd pop it again and whoop, and then just wait for it to disappear. Then I knew as soon as it disappeared that a fish had it in its mouth, and then I'd whoop, and then it was, again, almost like cheating, but it was really an interesting way to learn how that Texas rig Senko moved. I hesitate to say it's like a jerkbait, but it's really what it was, because I was jerking it and it would just shoot, and then kind of it would make its own way through the water, and then
basically like a fluke.
Yes, that's a good way to describe it.
Yes, yep. So yeah, that is actually a way that I will fish a Senko through lily pad sometimes is, I'll skip it through there, and then if nothing's getting it through the skipping action, then I'll either like toss it like on a lily pad, and then I'll just kind of like do quick like little jerk motions to kind of get it to dart back and forth to give it that different action as well.
And that's kind of exactly where I was throwing it there. It was right along like some edges where I didn't want to throw in the really super thick stuff, but I was throwing kind of right on the edge where I could still see it. And it was just working great. So definitely a super versatile bait. And like I said, the Yum Dingers are relatively cheap. The Senko or Yamamoto Senkos get a little pricier, but like I have a bunch here. I mean this, and it's hard to tell the difference really. Now the action does look different. I'm trying to think. This is a Yamamoto Senko. This is a Yum Dinger. So again, you can see it's a little more floppy. And then this is one of our show sponsors, the 153 Baits. And theirs is very, very similar to a Senko. So and the Senko I think goes for like $8 a pack in my neck of the woods. The
Yamamotos, they can be pretty pricey.
Whereas Yum Dingers are like $2.99.
Yeah, they're cheap.
And I think the 153 Baits I got for almost the same price. So, and they, for the most part, I think some of the pros probably swear by the Yamamotos, but me being kind of the cheaper, not pro, definitely I get kind of more bang for my buck, I think, from, a 20 pack of Yum Dingers than I do for one pack of.
Right. Yeah. And there's also something with like the type of sand or something that they use in the Yamamotos as well that make them like what they are. This one is just like a Bass Pro like Yum Dinger in a sense. I think they're a little bit more than a Yum Dinger. But I've actually been switching over to these just because. Is that
like a Sticko, I think is what.
Yeah, Sticko bait. Yeah. So, and I've noticed that they'll last a little bit longer than a Yum Dinger. Yum Dingers, they definitely do fall apart a lot easier. But that's actually a good segue into my trick of the trade is Now this takes a little bit of planning beforehand. And actually I've only been able to find them on eBay, and I don't have any with me right now. But if you want to have your Senko last a lot longer, go on eBay, look for clear shrink wrap. I'd have to look to see what size, and you can get like a really long roll of it, and then, cut it into, your little, enough to cover, a certain amount of the bait. And then you'll need like one of the, not like a regular lighter, but like some of the ones that like have like a what's the word? They have kind of like a flame to them. They're like
Like a torch. Yeah.
yeah, like a torch almost. Yeah, kind of like a torch. And what you'll do is when you're getting ready to throw it, you'll slide that sleeve right over the middle of your bait. Let it shrink around the bait. That bait will last you almost all day. I was shocked at that trick. I was like, this
so
is
I've done the O-ring thing, but I've
Mhm.
never and then they sell like they call it the wacky rig saddle, where it is almost
Oh,
like
yes.
but you know, and I actually with the Umdingers never really used the O-ring much because I'm like, these are cheap enough, I don't mind lose them
Right.
occasionally fast. But if you're throwing Yamamoto's, I would see where using that
Mhm.
tubing, the heat shrink, or you know something else that's going to keep it on there is definitely the way to go there. That's a good tip.
Yeah, it seemed like just the way that the heat shrink would just like shrink and wrap its way around the bait, it was less prone to like falling apart in a sense. I mean, you're still going to tear it eventually if you're getting, lots of hits and everything on it, but like it made it last for a long time. I was pretty shocked about that. I was like, this is a really good trick of the trade. Now, if, I could just remember to take all of those things with me, because, finding a little torch lighter sometimes is an easy thing to do either. And then you're like, well, I forgot everything, so I can't use that today.
I was going to say, and that might be something I would try and pre-rig too. Like,
Yeah.
at least throw a bunch of them, maybe a handful of them in, and do that before you hit the water. That way you don't have to mess around on the water too much. Now, you usually hook right through the tubing, or
yes, yep. So yeah, you just you slide the tubing through, and then you heat shrink it, and then once it's shrunk on there, then you just rig your hook through and everything, and you're ready to rock and roll.
Nice. Because I always heard about that with like the O-rings and stuff, that some people don't even go through the worm. They only go through the O-ring, and then some people go just through the worm under the O-ring. I heard about crisscrossing O-rings, like all sorts of different things, and I'm like, holy cow. So
yeah, it just depends on your preference, really. I've tried the crisscrossing method before, and I almost felt like that tore into the Senko a lot quicker than just a regular O-ring on there. I mean, I don't know if that was just my experience alone, or if there's any like solid truth to that, but I haven't been using O-rings nearly as much as what I used to.
okay.
I've just been kind of I'm quicker to it. And like I'll have some of them rigged up ready to go, but then like sometimes after a while I'm just like, whatever, I'm just gonna throw it.
Yep, that's how I end up more often.
It's like I ain't got time for this. I'm gonna throw it.
Now I noticed the hooks you were holding up are like smaller. And like Jackson Orr is one person that I know that throws the wacky rig a lot, and he actually throws it on slightly larger hooks than I would expect. But in my experience, I've gone that especially the weighted hook. The weighted hook you had is almost the exact one I use, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
For sure. So, and I've had tons and tons of luck with that. And I've used a bunch of different. I should have had my terminal tackle box down here, but I've used a lot of different sizes of wacky hooks, and I've had luck with a lot. I actually happened to get a giveaway or win a giveaway on Jackson's Facebook page.
Oh, nice.
So I got a few of the bigger ones, and they really did work out well. I just never went back to them after I used, I think I won 2 packs, and after I burned through them, I was like, hey, they work good, but I still have all these other ones. So I kind of went back to using the smaller ones, but don't be afraid to jump that up a little bit, especially if you're not fishing around cover. Now, I noticed I tend to get snagged up a little bit more with the bigger hooks when I was fishing around cover, but really with the little ones, I don't have that problem as much.
Yep. There's just less there to, kind of get snagged up. Like I've got, let's see here. Yeah, I've got a couple small ones here. So like, see if you guys can see it here. So yeah, that's my bigger size hook. And I'll put the other one right next to it. You can.
Yep.
I'm like backwards right now. I can't figure out my left from my right. But yeah, the other one's, you know, a little bit smaller than that. And it's definitely like smaller gauge metal as well, between, you know, some of the different sizes. So I don't know if you guys can see that very well.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
And another thing I liked about the Senko is it really got, or wacky rigging it. It really got me comfortable with casting right up next to something. I'd purposely try to bounce it off stuff. Like if I see a stump sticking out of the water, I would try and hit that stump, and then knowing that it's going to fall right down next to it. And you don't really have to worry. Now, if you're pulling up over stuff, sometimes it will get hung up. But as long as you're just hitting it and letting it drop right next to it, then a lot of it really doesn't get snagged that much. Even if, you know, like the weighted hook you have has the you know, guard on it, but even the open face hook, I tended not to get stuck a ton, you know.
Yeah. Again, yeah, it just depends, you know, the type of cover that you're fishing as well. I get hung up all the time, but that's because I will skip a Senko into the reeds, knowing that I'm going to catch the reeds 90% of the time. But there is that 10% of the time where I catch a big fish. So it is worth it.
and sometimes at first I was intimidated with the hook size and the big fish, but I can tell you my PB largemouth, which was 20 inches, came on one of those tiny little hooks just like that.
Nice.
So it was there was a lay down that I just happened to, you know, I think I actually got snagged on something on the bank, and I was like, well, I'm already right up here against the bank. I'm just going to flip over to that lay down that's right there, and bam, like nailed it. So now luckily I didn't have to drag it too far. That light hook might have, you know, had a problem if I had a longer struggle with it, but it really, you know, was no problem. And I tend to, you know, don't have a ton of fish jump or come off with that hook.
Nice.
I feel like it keeps them on there good, and it, you know, doesn't require a home run hook set, you know, in my opinion or my experience to really keep them pinned. As long as you don't give them slack, you should be good.
Nice. The other good benefit about fishing with the Senko is you've got a pretty high rate of catching a lot of dead stick fish. If you don't know what dead sticking is basically you throw a bait out there and you don't even do anything with it. You're not watching your line, you're not retrieving or anything. And when you go to retrieve, hey, you've got a fish on the line.
Yep. And there's been so many times where I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to eat a sandwich. So I just suck it out and put it in my rod holder and start eating my sandwich. And then all of a sudden my line's taken off, you know. It is totally a do nothing, you know. If you dead stick it. I forget I was fishing with a buddy of mine. We were having a really slow day, and I was like, well, you know what? Maybe we should just go back to the Senko. And so I started tying one of mine on, and he had like 2 rods and had one on it. He put his in the water and then started tying on something else, and it just grabbed it and ran right under his boat. And he's like, holy crap, I wasn't even doing anything. And so yeah, it's a great bait for that kind of thing too. If you know you're going to be like, if I get a phone call or something, I'll often just cast it and let it sit while I'm talking, because like you said, 9 times out of 10 something will just come along and suck it up. And
exactly. Yeah, if you're fishing a tournament and you're wanting to switch and you're just like, man, I'm going to lose some time changing out baits, throw out your wacky rig, just let it sink and just let it sit, you know, while you're doing all your other stuff, because hey, you're still technically fishing. So yeah.
Yep. And it like I said, it's definitely what kind of rod do you generally throw it on? I definitely have my favorite rod, and I was curious what yours is.
So yeah, usually when I'm throwing the Senko, at least wacky rig style, I'm throwing it on my spinning rod, and I actually use a really short rod for this one. Mine's a 6'9", I believe, something like that. Yeah, it's pretty short. Well, at least, shorter compared to, your average like 7-foot rods. But like I have so much better control of it. And I only fish it on just like I think like a medium light rod, and then line, I think max I'll use 10, but most of the time I think I usually use 8.
That sounds similar to my setup. Now I usually do braid to leader, just because I feel like I can cast a lot farther. And I use the high vis braid so that I can watch my line, because a lot of times you will see that jump. So I think it's important to be able to see your line if you can. And then I just use like a rod and a half length of leader. So I keep the leader knot out of my reel. And that kind of covers me for the depths that I usually fish, because it's, if you have 7 foot plus of leader on there, you're gonna be far enough away from the main line that the fish probably isn't going to see it.
Right. Yep.
So, and then I actually like an extra fast tip on that, and only because I like to feel, like I said, if I can feel that bite instead of just seeing it.
Yes.
I feel like I get a lot more, and it also helps me to avoid snags. So if I'm starting to pull up on something and I can feel it kind of rubbing, then I know to, go easy on it. So that's I think, and I have actually a St. Croix Mojo bass that's I forget what the length is, but it's a medium extra fast tip, and that's my Senko rod, because I feel like it allows me to feel everything and really get a good feel on it. So
definitely, yeah. I think I've got a St. Croix Avid. Or wait, what is my short one? What is that one? Golly, I can't. Or I think it's the Avid X.
Okay.
Spinning reel. I've got 2 of them that are the same length that I can never remember what that other one is. It's a green one. That's all I've had it for like 10 years, and I keep forgetting what the darn thing is, I have I've got like a lighter Fluger on one of them, and then I just got a Daiwa is it the Fuego? I think that's right. Yeah, Daiwa Fuego. Which I really like. So those are usually my 2 go-tos when I'm doing my spinning reels. Now, when I Texas rig with a Senko, I will actually use my bait caster for that one, just because I've got enough of like a weight to it. Sometimes like I'll fish with a weight on there, or I'll add like maybe like a nail weight to it or whatnot. But usually I have better control using a bait caster when I'm Texas rigging it.
Well, it was interesting when I talked to Fluke Master Gene Jensen. When I mentioned about using a Texas rig without a weight, he's like, "That's not Texas rig." He was very particular and very made it matter of fact that he doesn't consider that to be the same thing. I'm like, okay, interesting. All right, well,
but it is.
It kind of, to me, Texas rig is the way the hook is in the worm, but for some reason I wasn't sure what he didn't like about that, but it was almost like don't bring that up, and I was like, okay.
Well, potato.
Right. I'm not going to argue with him, because he has caught way more fish than I have. So.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Any other anything else you want to add on the Senko? I mean, I highly encourage anybody who's just getting started to give that a try, because that is about as easy as it gets. Like I said, I don't know of anything that I would recommend above that, just because that is that's what got me hooked when I started doing that. I mean, I spent quite a while messing around with other stuff, and then somebody happened to mention that to me. Oh, why don't you just try this? And then almost the first time out, I had success with it, and then, oh man, that was all I threw for a long time, because I was like, well, it worked, and then it just kept catching me fish. So it definitely works, and it's easy, and I can't say enough about it. Good about it.
Definitely, yeah. Another thing with the wacky rigs is the spring spring screw lock. There we go.
Screw lock, yeah.
Yes, on the hooks is definitely a thing to consider. just because, I think it holds the bait on there a little bit better than just your typical going through or whatever. There's more like stuff that's like hanging onto your bait. I like to use the bigger size screw locks on here just because, again, it's more like metal that's grabbing onto that bait, which is, going to have the lesser amount of chance for it to either slip off or slide off or that type of thing.
Now, you said that's for a Texas rig?
Yeah, Texas rigging.
Okay. I thought you said wacky rig at first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I might have accidentally said wacky.
I was like,
rig.
that one I definitely haven't heard. I was like, wow, how's that work?
Yeah. So yeah, you just screw the one end on, and then you just take it. Come on. Here we go. And then you just tuck in the tip of the hook. And there you go. You got a nice Texas rigged Senko.
Definitely. And I actually started buying those screw locks on like eBay and AliExpress because you can get a crap ton of them.
Oh yeah, they're super cheap. Yeah.
Right. And so I just have like a bag of like 200 in my tackle box that, I'm never gonna probably use all those, but it does make it nice. Same for swim baits too.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it really holds them well. And you're not constantly, every time when you reel in, you're not constantly readjusting your bait. It just stays where it's supposed to. So,
yep, exactly.
Now, one thing it doesn't work super great on is Z-Man baits.
Yeah, Z-Man. Yeah, that material is just, it's odd.
Yes, for whatever reason, it screw locks and Z-Man don't mix. If you do have a Z-Man, you're better with any kind of keeper where it's the kind of push on and slide past. Yeah, but if it's regular material, it really does help keep it in place and keep you from having to readjust it all the time. So.
Yep, exactly. Good deal.
Awesome, Susie. Well, we're past our hour mark, so we are doing really well. Tons of great information. So I guess we can probably start wrapping it up. I wanted to give you a chance. When can we expect the Outdoor Women's Show to come back? I know it's super popular, and I love hearing all the ladies that come on your show. I mean, I kind of want to snag as many of them as I can.
Right. Yeah, I've actually had some people ask me about that too. I did want to get it started back up in October, but just some things haven't worked out, personally or whatnot. But and I know the podcast is going to be taking its Christmas break here soon.
I'm not looking forward to that, I promise.
Right. But I'm hoping to, get back on track and get started in I think I'm going to start off doing maybe like once a month type thing starting in January. But then once the season gets going and everything, then I'm hoping to do like an every other week type of thing. So yeah,
that's the nice thing about the amount of guests that we have now is it really does give you a little bit of kind of options for how often you can make it on.
Mm-hmm.
So as Paddle and Fin grows more and more, that's one of the added benefits. In addition to just having so much more content. I mean, with the mindset and the bass thumbs fishing now off the waters and doo-doo stuff. I mean, it's just we're covering so many more things now. And Brad Roboss's Fur and Feathers. So it's just it's awesome to see how we've grown, but. It also takes a little weight off us because, we don't have to have quite the number of content that we might have had to in the past. So.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Well, cool. I look forward to that. I do miss hearing you and the Outdoor Women's Show, but I know you've been doing a ton of stuff behind the scenes with the
trail series.
Yes, the trail series. Yes, you were a big player behind that, and so thanks for all your work you put into that. How about sponsors and stuff? Do you want to give a shout out to anybody?
Yeah, most definitely. Quest Water Sports out of Ottawa, Illinois. They are my Hobie dealer. Bassett Baits, the maker of my very special swim jigs that I've been showing you guys. Catch Products. Gosh, I'm probably going to
There's been some awesome videos with Catch, by the way.
I know, right? I'm super jealous. It's just like, I mean, I was glad I got the salmon video, but I'm like, I want to do more. Let's see here. So you have Catch Products, Kistler rods. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. It's been a while since I've done a plug on sponsors, but yeah, I'm probably forget. Yeah, She Angler, Custom Baits, Miss Mel Isaac. She does an awesome job custom painting anything. Jerk baits, crankbaits, even replicas. Like, it looks like it's real. So yeah, if you're wanting to do like a replica type thing, hit her up. And I think that's the majority. I mean, of course, Paddle and Fin as well. Dakota Lithium. That's right. I forgot about that. I knew I was forgetting one.
Cool. Well, thank you again so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
I love having you back as always. Happy to have the Queen back on and gracing us with her knowledge. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for tuning in to the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment. This where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rip more lips. Have a good night, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com